Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Andertons TV, and today my special guest is Dave Boonshoft, the man behind the wonderful range of bass products Aguilar. Heads, cabs, pedals, pickups, preamps. We're going to talk about all that. You're coming up for next year will be a special year for you, right? 25 years of
25 years of doing this, making gear for bass players.
So what got you into that then? Were you a pro bass player prior to that? Or?
I was. I had about a 25-year career as a pro bass player, doing all kinds of gigs and doing studio work. And eventually, over time, I gradually realized that the sound I wanted to get, I had to come up with some ideas on my own.
Okay. So have you always been based out of New York? Were you born and raised?
I grew up in the Midwest of the United States in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
So, you can't really take the country boy out, but, I've been in New York for 30 years.
As I say, the accent, there's definitely a New York tang to the accent.
Well, I'm an adopted New Yorker at this point.
And was most of your playing career in New York?
Most of it, but I worked out of Miami, Florida for a long time in disco bands, and we're talking a long time back, disco bands and rock and jazz in the Midwest and Missouri and in Ohio. And but I wanted to come to New York and play with the big boys. I wanted to see if I could be a freelance bass player in New York City, and I had the opportunity, so I went.
So, I mean, we had Marcus Miller on the show earlier on this year, and he talked about New York. New York seemed to almost be for bass players the kind of thing that LA was for guitar players during that time.
Oh.
So what kind of guys were you playing with?
Well, I did a little bit of everything, because this is pre-MIDI studios. Again, I like to point out that I'm extremely old, so I remember when you had to have a room full of musicians to do anything. So when I first came there, you could work as doing publishing demos, songwriter demos. For months I did children's records, and you would do them by the script. You didn't even count the songs. So you could get a lot of experience as a studio musician and make contacts before you ever played with somebody super famous. I
get it. So what was it then? I mean, tell me what your sort of typical bass rig was pre the Aguilar days. What was it? What were you using, and what was the sort of frustration that led you into tweaking some of your own stuff?
Sure. Well, there was two types of rigs. If I was doing a road gig, we had SVTs, and depending on how well they were cared for by the backline companies, they were great, or sometimes not so great. The design was great, but sometimes the care was deficient.
Yep.
In New York, the prime requirement was I had to be able to take all my stuff and walk to the corner where I could hail a cab. So if I couldn't walk a block with everything loaded on me, it was no good. So, we've been thinking about lightweight gear for a long time. It's just been a long time to realize lightweight gear that had good low-end response, was reliable, had good filters and EQ available on it.
Yeah.
But it was always a requirement of, can I make it to the avenue to hail a cab without falling over?
Yeah, I can't imagine that lugging an SVT head.
No, well, we didn't do it. We didn't do it. We loved it for backline, and certainly at that time, a lot of the studios would have amps in them, usually B15s and some other small amps.
And so it started with amps and cabs, did it, the Aguilar thing?
It actually started with a product called the DB680, which is a preamp.
Okay.
So at the time, I designed the preamp with Alex Aguilar. I had started to do studio work, and I kind of started to understand really great studio preamps, the early stuff, the Telefunken tube stuff, Neve preamps. We used to, at one point I went on an old board, we busted out all the preamps and the compressors and put them in a rack and rented them to other people. And in fact, I had a company called Boonshoft Vintage Rentals. So I'm doing this and I'm playing gigs and sessions, and I'm thinking, when we go into the studio, when I go in there, I want to control how my sound gets to tape as it was at the time.
Yeah.
And we want to bypass the preamps in the console, and that became the preamp, the DB680, which had 2 fully parametric EQs in it,
Wow.
A gang resistor switch on the back like the original Neve modules, and tubes.
Right.
And it was so. That was actually the first product. Was
Okay.
was a piece of studio gear for myself.
And then amps, cabs followed, the sort of pedals and the electrics more recently.
Yeah, after the preamp was done, we thought, okay, we should make an amp, and we built an amp called the DB728, which was actually 8 6550 power tubes. So it was a 400 watt tube monoblock, and it's a glorious sound, but
Doesn't really tick the portable box, does it, that one?
tick the portable box, but we were working with tubes. I believe that part of the Aguilar sound is always about harmonic complexity. So there's a lot of ways to get that, and you can do a lot of things with transistors. But at the time, we were focused on using tubes.
Okay, well look, we've got a selection of stuff here today, but I think the main thing that we want to try and focus on, and I'm going to bring a colleague of mine, Caleb, in that you might have seen in 1 or 2 other bass videos that we've done, to really talk about, we could talk about a ton of stuff.
Sure.
We could talk about preamps and pickups and pedals and amps and cabs and all that kind of stuff. But I find this kind of fascinating transition between these great big block style bass amplifiers that are much more reminiscent of a bygone era for me, the big, powerful, and now this idea of just to give you guys this is the amp underneath this, the 751. That's a pick it up with 2 hands.
It's 45 pounds.
Is it really 45
Yeah.
pounds?
Well, but now keep in mind that SVT, depending on what era it was anywhere from 80 to 90.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So
you've forgotten.
No, I just think it's because you see so few SVTs anywhere other than rental firms. It's like nobody actually picks an SVT up. But you're now it's much more commonplace to find a perfectly capable gigging bass amplifier in something that, what is this, like 7 or 8 pounds? 5 pounds. Wow. Yeah. So I thought it would be cool for Dave and Caleb to sort of explore who kind of still really should buy this kind of a product, and who now really, can get a perfectly acceptable, kind of life on the road out of this kind of product. So Caleb's going to come in, play a little through the 2. You guys are going to hear the DI output from each amp, so the cabinet choice isn't going to affect what you hear. And Dave, if you would be so kind as to take the people through kind of, what's what, and by all means, if you will use basses with your pickups and preamps in, talk a little bit about that too as well. But thank you very much for coming over.
All right.
Enjoy your time in the UK.
Thank you, Lee.
And anyway, here comes Caleb.
Hey guys, Caleb again here from Andertons with Dave Boonshoft from Aguilar. Here we are. We've got the rigs, got the heads, we've got the cabs, most of the cabs.
Most of the cabs.
And we've got one of the pedals here. I just want to start off with the heads.
Okay.
DB751. Tell us about this bad boy.
Well, this is the descendant of the DB750 that we've had in production since about 2002.
Right.
It's a massive solid-state power section.
Sweet.
And a full tube preamp.
Right.
And it's almost, I like to think of it like the Beatles, because, it's the combination that made everything happen. Although I have to say, I like the early Paul McCartney solo work and, this and that.
Yeah.
But, okay, the Beatles, the combination of talents
That's what happened.
was off the hook. So you get a super clean, powerful power section and a great sounding tube preamp.
Yeah.
And that's the amp that you're going to see with people in all styles of music, funk, pop, rock, jazz, great sounding amps. The DB751 is a combination of great harmonic overtones on the attack. You're going to hear a massive, powerful attack and great note development because of the preamp section.
Excellent.
So I'm going to plunk a couple notes. you know.
Well, there it is. There's that fullness that you were talking about.
Right.
That's a great sounding amp. And what I love about the rest of the series too, which we're going to get into, is you still get that fullness from all these guys as well.
Right.
Even being lightweight though.
Right.
But I'd like to know your design process.
Right.
So when you actually have that idea
Right.
for what sound, as you were saying to Lee,
Right.
about you had the sound you had to go for. How do you actually go about that process of getting that sound into one of these?
Sure. Well, it depends. At Aguilar, we think about what each part of the electronic signal chain is supposed to do.
Right.
Because, you know, here's a wonderful bass, all wonderful basses. Where to go? Oh, there's
There you
just
go,
nothing in the
obviously.
stand. But you got to think about what part each thing plays.
Right.
So think of your instrument as your vocal cords.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So the pickups are microphones. They're transducers. You got to get
Like
this get the signal to the amplifier.
Yeah.
The preamp section of the amplifier is all the filters. This is where all the tone is created. So when we talk about harmonic richness, distortion, where it feels like it's really responding to your playing, that's all in the preamp section.
Right.
The amplifier section is really to make it louder.
Yeah.
And then the speakers are also transducers. It has to translate now.
That
So
makes sense, yeah.
the Aguilar design process and the reason we're able to build great lightweight amplifiers is we think about what needs to be in the preamp sections of the tone hammer amplifiers and the AG series amplifiers to give it the tone quality that we want to have.
Yeah.
And how loud does it need to get?
Well, why don't we actually plug into, let's go into the AG700.
Okay.
What we're going to do now, we're just going to go through each amp in the series. So we're going to go, we've done the DB751, we're going to go to the AG700, then we're just going to jump into a tone hammer as well. And we could just have a bit of a sound to see which one is right for you, is pretty much the best way
Let's
to
do it.
pose this one.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So this is the AG700 we're about to go through.
The AG700 is 700 watts rated continuously. So continuous output means that you can do full bandwidth at full power without having any kind of shutdown. And this is really important because some amplifiers are rated at peak ratings or average ratings, and it doesn't really tell you what you can do without a failure, how loud you can get. So you need to buy an amp that's rated with continuous output. And so this is a very loud amp. It's a real 700 watts.
Wicked.
The filters on this, we decided to go on the AG series for a big open sound. We wanted to have a very clean sound. So it doesn't mean you want a clean sound. Like if you're a metal player, you might want a lot of distortion.
For sure.
But put a pedal before the amp and have a big open clean power section.
Yeah.
So I'll play a couple notes. If you think about the sound that we heard before, it's much clearer. The bass tried to get away from me while I was doing it.
Pull it back in.
We had to contain it.
I see that thing, That's very interesting. I just want to talk, though, about these bright and deep switches here. Do you mind if we do a quick demo of just the two and explain why we've got those on the AG700 instead of the Tone Hammer 700? Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wicked. Should we start with the bright switch?
Yeah, put it in,
Smash
so
it.
to speak. The key with a bright and deep switch is you want them to be very broadband so that it doesn't unbalance the instrument. So you don't want to just have all of a sudden your G string loud as heck.
No, for sure.
So I'm going to play across the register and you'll hear the entire instrument is brighter. Right? So even the E string is brighter. So you've done a very broadband boost. If you put in the deep switch, you'll hear the same difference.
that's one of the things I love about Aguilar amps is it's balanced across the board.
Right.
Sometimes when you put one of those switches in on an amp, it's just overpowering. It's just boomy. It's just muddy. But the Aguilars are just so balanced in doing that. And I think that's fantastic to have, especially as a bass player. And I found a lot of times with my playing too, if I start doing that sort of thing, I just lose control of my bass frequencies. Whereas to have that, to be able to still give it that little bit more, but not lose that balance.
Well, you need to have well-designed filters.
Yeah, which I think it's brilliant that you've done all of that inside something so small.
Thank you. I have
Honestly, it's awesome.
I have your $20 for you later.
Yeah, perfect. Mate. It's, just fine there. Perfect. But if we jump into the Tone Hammer 700 now and just do that comparison.
It's a very different design. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, let's do it.
The Tone Hammer 700, before I play a couple notes, I'm going to tell you, it was designed to be as warm as we could possibly make it. So whereas the AG series is a very clean, open-sounding amplifier, the Tone Hammer never cleans up.
Right.
So it's we want to say it's not tube emulation because we don't really play that, but
for sure, cool.
But it's tube-like distortion. There's a lot of emphasis on the even overtones, the octaves, thirds, and fifths.
Right.
And it's going to draw your ear to the mid-range. So it's going to, it'll feel a little more mid-range forward, and you should be able to hear the added distortion.
Wicked. Let's do it. Yeah, it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Definitely there. It'll be great to hear you play as your favourite bass line.
Oh, the favorite bass. You can't be just there. Oh, you want to hear the favorite bass line?
Yeah, I want to hear it through the Tone Hammer.
Put a little more bass on that.
Yeah, just try that. I'll bring it up to 1 o'clock.
And I should say the Tone Hammer series has our drive circuit, which is the AGS circuit that's also on the Tone Hammer pedal. And it adds distortion, but it also adds an EQ curve that kind of tightens up the high and the low end. So, so as you add distortion, you don't get muddy. So
I like that.
But I think we were talking about James Brown, Funky Good Time, where he counts it, he goes, go ahead, count it in. You know how to do it.
1, 2.
You have to shake your head like that. Very important. So
it does sound good. I mean, the great thing about Tone Hammer I found, and what I've played through in the shop as well, is that I've been able to get those vintage tones as well as pushing for that more modern sound as well.
Right.
So with an amp like that, when you try and choose it as a player, like what would you suggest the DB7514 or the AG700 or the Tone Hammer 700? What customers would you suggest those ones for?
You know, the DB751 is it weighs about 45 pounds, which sounds like a lot by modern standards.
Yeah, sure.
But in the old day, an 80-pound amp was not uncommon for a bass player.
No.
So we'll keep it in perspective.
Yeah, of course.
This, again, is like the Beatles. You've got a combination of a super clean power section, very powerful, and a full tube preamp. So you have all the richness of the tubes and a very clean power section.
Beautiful.
You'll see this on stadium gigs. Obviously, you don't want to be walking with this in your knapsack.
No.
You're gonna need a little more transportation than that.
Yeah.
But it's a classic amp, and again, a very professional amp. All these amps, though, when we use the word professional, the idea is to have a great sound, to be able to go on the gig and play what you need to play, not think about your gear creating an obstacle for you. And any of these amps would do that. The AG series amp is designed for a player, again, who wants a clean sound. The headroom seems very big.
Right.
I would say that with the 751, the headroom feels limitless because you've got the tubes kind of soaking up any kind of bad distortion that you might hear. This has very big headroom and a very big, clean, open sound, as we've demonstrated. Tone Hammer, again, this is for somebody who says, I love tube amplifiers.
Yeah.
I love a warm and gritty sound. And, you know, it's not necessarily related to style. So some of our most
Right,
famous
yeah.
endorsers, like John Patitucci,
Yeah.
who plays a lot of upright through a tone hammer, because
Fair.
those overtones are key to a musical sound. That's the sound that, you know, the overtones is what creates music.
Yeah.
That has to be there.
That's beautiful.
So you can use them with any style, and obviously with the tone hammer range, we have different power outputs at 350, 500, 700. Again, all rated continuous, which is very important.
That's awesome, man. Well, now we've got all the heads plugged into some of the cabs here.
Right.
Now you've got two different series in the cabs.
Right.
You've got the SLs and you've got the DBs.
Right.
Now the SLs are the super lightweight. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's correct.
And
We were
the
going to
DBs.
call it stupid light, but then we
Stupid
thought,
light.
you know, but super light seems
Super
like
light makes even better.
more. We didn't want to cause a problem for anybody.
Stupid
You know,
light.
yeah, stupid light. It's stupid light.
Stupid. I mean, it's a great way to describe it, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
It's
stupid
ridiculously light. Super light works as well. Well, we've got the super lights here. Now we didn't have any of the DBs, unfortunately, to bring in, but
Right.
the difference between the DB series and the SL series. Can you talk us through those?
Well, the DB series uses ceramic drivers, ceramic magnets, and very heavy Baltic birch.
Right.
And so it's a very stiff cabinet.
Right.
And you're going to feel like you've got that extended low end, but the low mids will come right up and meet with it. So you don't feel any kind of scoopy mid-range. It's a great solid sound on stage. Makes a great 810, great 410.
I see.
A very full and thick sound.
So that's the type of one to have for the bigger cabs, so the 810s, the 410.
Yeah.
Wicked.
And we do a full line there. We do 12s as well.
Oh, wow. Perfect.
The SLs, lightweight plywood, neodymium drivers.
Yeah.
All of our cabinets feature a tweeter except for the 15s. Both the DB115 and the SL115 don't have tweeters.
Right. Why is that?
Well, you end up with a gap between how high the speaker goes full range, the 115,
see.
and where the tweeter is. And if you try to design the crossover to make the frequencies cross over, it kind of sounds funny. So it's better to let the driver run full range, and almost any style of music, you're fine with that, unless you really want to slap and get kind of artifacts on the top, kind of. Then you're going to need the tweeter.
Yes.
But back to the SL series, although the baffle board, which the speaker is mounted on, is very thick 3/4 inch plywood, so that has to be very stable. We designed a crossover that smooths out the upper mid-range bump that a lot of Neo cabinets have, and we felt like, all right, why do we want to have this little bump at 1K or 2K? And we decided we could get rid of that, and so the mid-range is very even and smooth. You're going to feel nice, low, extended low end, and a very clear high end. So I would say a bigger sounding, but slightly less aggressive than the DB series.
Okay, so it again comes down to, hey, what do you actually need as a player?
Right.
I think the cabs are great, especially because we were talking earlier about lugging heavy gear, and you were saying that's part of the reason it inspired you.
Right.
To have these sort of cabs where you know you're going to get a lightweight sound, because I've had a lot of bass cabs that are lightweight,
right,
but they just don't have that fullness.
Right.
So it's very interesting, and also what you're saying about the 15s not having a tweeter.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Oh, thank you.
So I think that's fantastic. They sound great too. There's one last thing we need to touch on though.
Okay.
That's these pedals.
Okay.
Now you have full range. You've got envelope fills. You've got distortions, octavers.
Right.
You've also got the Tone Hammer DI bass preamp, which is, now if I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, it's the preamp from the Tone Hammer series.
It's a version of it.
It's a version, right?
It's a version of it.
How does it differ?
Well, this has a slightly different gain structure.
Cool.
And the implementation is different electronically. This is a great preamp DI. It has a lot of output. You can actually use this to jack into a power amp. It'll drive a power amp. Plenty of headroom to bypass mic pre and a console. It has pre and post EQ, obviously. AGS is the adaptive gain shaping, which is the same as the drive on the tone hammer, so you can add distortion. Very flexible, all-around, great recording DI. Great if you're using in-ears on the gig and you don't have an amp on stage, but you still want to get your sound.
Oh man,
great pedal.
That's fantastic, and they're built like tanks too.
You know, the original design thing, we thought, can you kill vampires with this?
Have you killed one?
No, I've never killed one, but that's the question. So anybody out there who wants to kill a vampire with this, let us know. There's probably a prize.
That's weird. So there's just one more product I want to touch on, and that is actually the pickups. Now we've got one of the Ibanez here and one of the Spectres as well.
Okay.
Now I've got quite a range of pickups. This is my favourite setup, the PJ.
PJ.
That is mine to roll with. But if you want to talk us through one of the different types of pickups you guys are doing, and also the different ones we have here.
Sure. Well, we make soap bar shaped pickups in a couple different designs.
Wicked.
This is the Super Double.
Right.
This is a hum canceling pickup using Alnico magnets. Very kind of focused and clear, and I'd say slightly aggressive.
Cool.
Just somewhat, it's punchy. It would be the word that we use. Way too much, but it's a good word in this context.
Yeah, 100%.
So this is a Super Double in this fabulous Ibanez bass.
Wicked.
And you've got our 60s P pickup and 60s jazz pickup. Actually, this is probably a HC. This is a hum canceling jazz pickup.
That's it, yeah.
And this was modeled after, we designed this by listening to my personal collection of precision basses and a fair amount of intuition and experimenting.
Right.
Very accurate, full sounding, rich P bass pickup. And the HC series jazz bass, it's important to have a hum canceling pickup in that position so that since you can't run two jazz bass pickups in hum cancel. So this is fully hum canceling.
Wow. That's why it probably sounds so good. Because you also do a, well, speaking of pickups, preamp.
Right.
Inside bass. Do you want to talk through that one? This one doesn't have it, but in general, the preamp you guys do.
Well, we have the OBP series.
Right, okay.
So we for years we make a OBP 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
One is boost only, all FET. OBP 2 and 3 is boost and cut.
Right.
Great preamps. I believe they're in this Ibanez bass as well. And also Spectre basses use them a lot.
So,
basically at Aguilar we look at everything in the signal path.
Yeah.
So the transducers, the preamps is part of the filtering.
Yeah.
Obviously the amplifiers, the amplification, the transducers.
Of course.
And so it's about concept of design, but it's also about quality control. And I'd like to tell you that we make all of this stuff in New York. We actually make the speaker cabinets in Ohio, which is not exactly New York, but
your home state, isn't it?
that's where I'm originally from.
Right.
So,
okay.
Obviously there's some cabinet makers back there still.
Yeah.
But it's not that you can't make great products anywhere in the world, but it gives us the opportunity to make sure that we have control over our processes.
Absolutely.
That we know always what's happening. There's no surprises anywhere down the line. And then when you get an Aguilar product, there's no surprises for you that they've kind of popped up because nobody had control.
Yeah.
So it's about extreme quality control and extreme thinking about the processes that we want to do to make Aguilar products.
That's fantastic. And you've also just brought out a new Stingray pickup.
Right.
Now, what's the difference between the older one you guys were doing and this new one?
Right. Well, the old one uses big Alnico magnets.
Okay.
And the string moves, when you have a magnet like this, it moves in and out of the magnetic field. So that's how you get your attack and decay.
Right.
This new pickup uses our DCB technology. So these are dual ceramic bars. They're underneath the covers.
Okay.
And the string is never out of the magnetic field. So what you end up is with a great dynamic attack, but also as the note decays, it's still in the magnetic field, so you get all the overtones. So think of a Music Man style pickup and sound where you get all the snap and punch that you're kind of familiar with.
Yeah.
but also a lot of note development, a beautiful harmonic quality as well.
Yeah, if you haven't actually checked these ones out, I believe you did a demo with them. They're on the Aguilar website.
Right.
And it sounds phenomenal. It warms up a lot more than a standard Stingray pickup does. So definitely check that out if you're in the market for a new Stingray pickup.
Right.
But Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure, my man.
Okay, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
And thanks to Andertons for having me as well.
No problem. Guys, come on down and try out all the Aguilar stuff we have. It's honestly as good as it's hearing in the video. It sounds better live. So come on down. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you.